Welcome to The Rania Show. I'm your host, Rania, and each week we have a story to share with you, whether it's mine or our guests. Tune in as we discuss trauma, manifestation, and everything in between. And today we have with us Laurie-Ann. So I'm going to have Laurie-Ann introduce herself, tell us a little bit more about herself and what she does, and go for it, Laurie-Ann.
Well, thank you very much for having me on this rainy Monday that we are recording this together. I'm a reformed painfully shy girl who accidentally said yes to a speaking opportunity. And I'm happy to share that story about that first moment. But saying yes to that as a reformed shy girl took me down the avenue of becoming a professional speaker. And I spoke about leadership and corporate engagement. And then something happened in 2017 at the Fort Lauderdale airport that I was not at that moment. And it changed the course of my business. I literally said, universe, I need a different business model. I was getting burnt out. And I got a text message 2 weeks later that said, Laurie-Ann, do you write speeches for people? I didn't write speeches for people, but I helped this woman write a speech because she had a failing business. And after her very first speaking opportunity, she not only converted 60% of the room onto her email list, she walked away with 3 full paying clients. She got referred to 2 other places to speak. And that was literally a grand slam.
Yeah.
But that made me think, I wonder if anybody else wants to know what I know from my 25 years in the professional speaking world. So this is what I do today, is that I help people use their voice, lead with their words, and really project that confidence when they're speaking, whether it's their 100th time or their very first time on stage.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And so you said you have 25 years of experience and you've been doing this, and so what happened, if you don't mind me asking, what happened in Florida? That was just your light bulb moment of hey, I'm pursuing this.
Yes. I was hopping on and off airplanes, working with private companies, more private events. But I would get home, take the clothes, throw it through the wash, throw it back into the suitcase, knowing that I was getting back on an airplane the next day. What happened in Fort Lauderdale is, here in the United States, you're allowed to travel with your firearms if you have the right paperwork. Yeah. And somebody traveled to Florida. And baggage claim is outside of TSA's jurisdiction. And they went into the men's room, put his semi-automatic rifle together, and came out shooting.
Oh my God.
Now, the Fort Lauderdale airport is a very busy airport to begin with, and there's lots of police officers. So I'm grateful that the fact that only 2 people were killed, because it really could have been a whole lot more. But the FAA runs the globe. And every plane that was in the air was instructed to land at the nearest airport. And planes were coming in and landing or weren't taking off. And it was just walk away from the airport, because they were worried about copycats.
Yeah.
So because of that, I was just planes was my transportation. And I was just I'm exhausted. And that's what made me say, universe, I need a new business model.
Yeah. That's amazing. I mean, yeah, it's sometimes it's things that are seen as tragedies or unfortunately 2 people lost their lives. But it's then when you look at the gratitude and the things that come out of it, it's now you're doing this for 25 years and you love it and you're helping people. So you're taking the positive thing out of something that was a negative experience,
Exactly.
For those
and from helping that first woman, I realized I had a methodology on how I wrote speeches. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I ended up creating the in-demand signature speech methodology. It's there's a certain way that you write speeches, and I just did it. From my years of, studying leadership and studying neuroscience, I understood what the audience was going through. And I'm happy to talk more about what that experience is that you create as a speaker for the audience. But I think it's also really important for your listeners to understand that I believe that speaking needs to be redefined and stages needs to be redefined. Because me being on your podcast, this is a stage. I'm on your stage.
Yeah.
You have this stage that goes out weekly.
Yeah.
And that's just one of the many stages.
Yeah. That's so true. But yes, please tell us a little more about like how you connected like the neuroscience and your leadership, and like how did that all just come together, and like what's at the center, like what would you say is at the center of creating the speech and getting on stage, and like I know you have the neuroscience, the leadership, all of that, but what's at the center? What do you feel is the thing that brings everything together other than yourself, I guess?
Okay, I think to answer that question, whenever I'm helping somebody craft a speech, whether that is somebody who's in corporate, who gives multiple speeches probably each week, it's almost like a pastor. A pastor has to write a speech, a different speech every single week, versus like a coach, I would help them write a signature speech so that they actually are using the same speech again and again and again. So there's always, for anybody, there's two questions to answer before you start writing. And that is, what do you want to get out of the speech? What is it that you want to get out of speaking? And I was just on LinkedIn answering somebody's question who wants to understand, like, well, why do I need a signature speech? I'm just like, well, what do you want it to do for you? That was my first question. And then the second question is, what do you want the audience to do, feel, or believe when you're done speaking?
Mm-hmm.
And those two questions are like the finish line. So now you know where you're going. It's like a GPS system. That's the destination. So that's the core, is as a speaker, you should be getting and obtaining your goal. But at the same time, you have to give the audience what they need and to be very intentional about it. So that is like the foundation module of the in-demand signature speech.
Nice. Yeah, I think those are two very important questions, because it's like you're walking, and like you said, it's like a GPS. Like where's your destination? Where do you want to go? And that's like the bridging to your speech of like, that's a start, because now you know what you want, what your intention is, and how you want to draw people in. And then it's like, okay, now we get to the, like the middle, and like we stack it like a sandwich in a sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny that you say sandwich, because I actually feel like when you're building a speech, it is like a sandwich. So just to give everybody an idea, here's what happens in the audience. You have to give them a reason to put their phones down. So you're grabbing their attention. And keep in mind, everybody that is in your physical audience or your virtual audience has already said a micro yes to you. Yes, I'm interested in your topic. Yes, I'm interested in hearing you speak. Or yes, I think I'm going to have this problem in the near future if I don't already have this problem that I believe that you can solve. So micro yeses have already happened. So they're sitting down. You have to give them a reason, and that's why it's your opening. And your opening is designed to get people to lean in. But after your opening, what naturally happens, especially for the people who don't know you, is they cross their arms and they start to lean back. And what they're thinking is, but why should I listen to you? Now, this is all happening like subconsciously.
Yeah.
And you have to move into what I call the next block. In-demand signature speech is built in blocks. And the next block is your authority section. This is where you tell people why they should listen to you. And without sounding like a boring resume. So that can sound like, if you've never seen me speak before, I'm a reformed, painfully shy girl, and I've got over 25 years of experience because I accidentally said yes to a speaking opportunity way in the beginning. And so I've already established I've been doing this for 25 years. I'm a reformed, painfully shy girl. So all the shy people that are in the audience are like, she's just like me.
Yeah.
I'm shy too. And then I drop a couple of funny lines like about, like I've worked with a lot of Fortune 500 and 1000 companies. Maybe you've heard of this little company called Johnson and Johnson.
Mhm.
So it's not boring, it's
Yeah.
interesting, but it gives my credibility. And depending on the audience, I might also talk about, I'm also the author of 2 best-selling books, Rethink Leadership and Rethink Your Leadership, which are modern day parables. So I'm letting people know. So now they lean back in because they're just like, okay, I need to continue listening to her. And then we have these little transitional phrases that go from block to block. Okay, you didn't come here to learn all about me. You came here to learn about speaking. Let me share with you the first problem that I see people making. And then you're giving them only 3 pieces of information,
Mhm.
3 blocks. And then you have your call to action and your close. And whatever it is that you are sharing with the audience, whether it's a freebie, whether it's a call with you, whether it's a discount code on a program, it is like that's all along the GPS.
Yeah.
What,
Yeah.
that's probably what one of your goals was. Well, in order to reach that goal, what has to be in the presentation? What has to be in the speech? What stories do you need to tell so that people naturally are raising their hand saying, that's me, I need that?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And like the way
Yeah.
you're explaining it, I'm just like locked in. Tell
So
me.
that's a lot of practice too. And what you're saying about being locked in, like I hear from audiences and people telling me, like, you're so captivating to listen to. And we can talk a little bit more about that. And that's about playing with your voice, making it interesting, not sounding monotone from beginning to end. Like there's a lot of fluctuation, not just in tone, but also in speed, how
Mhm.
fast or how slow that I'm actually talking. But the in-demand signature speech method, is designed so that the right people say, oh my God, we need you in our company. I need you in my department. I want to hire you. I want that, like, the next time I have an opening, like you get promoted. I just had a client of mine reconnect with me, and she's a business storyteller, and she tells me on a reconnection call that she said, I never told you that I actually got to do a speech, a presentation at Microsoft. And as a result of speaking at Microsoft, she made $500,000.
Oh,
I
wow.
literally had to go back into the transcript and reread that to make sure I heard her correctly. But that's the possibility of
Yeah.
what happens when you have a beautifully crafted presentation that literally pulls the right people in, pushes the wrong people away, but those wrong people that you push away, they become referral agents for you.
Yeah.
So there's so much possibility with speaking to build your business, to build your personal brand, and to build your career.
That's amazing. I feel like it sounds like you're a storyteller in a sense. And it's like, like when you watch a really good movie and then you start like telling people about it, and it's like you're so captivated by like the emotions and the rawness of the movie or the show that you just have to tell everybody about it. And I feel like that's the same thing because we have a lot of like there's like Tony Robbins. He tends to draw in specific people. You have Gabor Mate, Dr. Joe Dispenza, and it's like, or like for some people, Mel Robbins. Like I've noticed she's getting like some backlash and stuff about like what she does, but she's still doing it because there are people that are for her and people that are not.
Mhm.
So it's definitely like you said, it's like, bringing in the people like, that just are on the same like wavelength in a sense.
Yeah.
And then like, bye to the rest, but
Yeah.
still referrals because they might say like, "Hey, she didn't work for me, but she might work for you," or like you might be interested in what she has. I wasn't, but you might be. You know what I mean? So you're still, even though you still become the subject of the conversation, even if like people are not, agreeing with what you're saying or you're drawn in to what you have to say, you're still a subject of the conversation in the sense of like, oh, I just saw Laurie-Ann speak and she wasn't for me, but she might be for you, if you're interested in, X, Y, and Z, so
Yes. Yes. And that's what happens with the people that are in your audience.
yeah.
Not everybody's going to like you, and that's okay. You don't have to be vanilla that
Mm,
everybody kind of likes. Like, be an interesting flavor.
exactly. Yeah. And I feel like even as vanilla, some people don't like vanilla. So it's like if you're constantly trying to like please people or get them like on board to who you are, you're only disappointing yourself and then you're disappointing others because then you're constantly trying to shift into somebody else to meet people's needs. And then at the end, you're miserable, you hate what you do, you're burnt out. And then
Mhm.
time they're still like, yeah, I'm not interested. So
Yeah. So I'll tell you about that first time that
yeah.
I spoke, that I said yes, that I accidentally said yes. And I it was I had just left my corporate job with Siemens, and I was with a few other women, and we were planning a networking event. And at that time, looking like women just network differently. And so we
Mhm.
wanted something that catered to women, but was also educational.
Mhm.
So with that, they all turned to me and said, "You do the speaking." And
Mhm.
my head went up and down. And inside, I was thinking, what are you doing? You don't speak in front of people. However, there's a lot of transferable skills. And what I mean by that is that I used to teach aerobics. I taught aerobics in college. And before I became like a certified, instructor, I was the girl that was in the way in the back.
Mm.
And I literally started to visualize myself leading the class. So then I was inching my way forward with each week until I was actually in the front row. So there I am. I'm teaching aerobics. And I remember like some of the clubs that I spoke at, that I said, excuse me, that I taught at, they didn't have microphones. So I was literally projecting my voice, or in other words, yelling at people to motivate them. And so I took that as like, oh, if I could yell at people to get them to exercise, I bet I could speak to them reasonably as the person in the front of the room. So that was how I kind of looked at my past skills and how do I do this?
Mhm.
So I spoke, I turned to what I call the college professor, which is a person that's just dishing out information, no stories, nothing about me, like nothing like the in-demand signature speech methodology. Okay. There was no opening. There was no who is Laurie-Ann. I just went into teacher mode. And then this is how I ended. I'm done now. And if you want to speak to me, I literally, you're supposed to laugh at that. I said, I'm done now. If you want to talk to me, I'll be in the back of the room. All I was trying to do was get away from all these eyes that were on me. And in doing that, I literally went to the back of the room. The right people came up to me. They had questions, and the questions were, do you have a website? Do you work with clients? And I was just like, did you not see the train wreck up there? But here's the difference. I showed up and served the audience.
Oh,
I didn't worry about a lot of things that I hear from prospects and the reason why people don't want to start speaking. Well, what if I forget my words? What if I forget what I'm going to say? What if somebody asks me a question that I can't answer? Like, how do I get started? Like all of those things. Like I showed up and I served.
mhm.
And today, like, there's a methodology to this
Yeah.
so that you engage your audience, you connect with your audience, because that's one of the most important things is you have got to connect with people. They've got a little mini computer in their pocket and it's buzzing or vibrating, and you're fighting against that. So you've got to be good in the front of the room.
Yeah, no, and I think that that's such an amazing like story to share because it's true. It's like you had the intention, this is what you wanted to bring to the room, this is what you wanted to inform them. And even though it wasn't like you didn't have the methodology yet and like what you have now, you still showed up and you still set the intention and people like were drawn into that intention because they felt that like you were actually there to help, you were actually there to serve, and they wanted to learn more. So yeah, it's about just like, even when you're scared, just show up
Mm.
and just do it in a sense, even though you're scared, because you'll be surprised at what comes out on the other side of fear. Yeah.
So true. So true. And the other side of fear, I mean, like I look at fear as like a dark storm. And you can either be like the cows like to turn around and run away from the storm, or you can be like a buffalo that's just like, you know what, I'm just going to get to the other side. So I'm going to run into the storm. And nobody else can run through the storm for you. Even if you decide, like, I'm not going to run away from it and I'm not going to run towards it, I'm just going to sit here and wait for it to pass.
Yeah.
You're still the one who has to get to the other side.
Yeah.
As somebody who has gone through grief, I lost my first husband, and I think of that, like nobody could go through that grief for me.
Yeah.
I'm the one who spent many nights just sitting on the couch watching TV for hours, just having the TV on for noise. And today, I live in a very quiet world. I love my quiet, but nobody can go through that.
Yeah.
I'm the one who had to do it.
100%. And I agree. It's like we all have our own experiences. And even if it's the same event that has happened to everyone involved, each person is still going to experience it differently. They're going to grieve it differently. They're going to react to it differently. So it's not to say, like, oh, well, I went through the same thing you went through, and look at me, I'm fine. And no. And that's why I always tell people, like, I can only imagine what you're going through right now. And because it's like you don't know what somebody's going through, even if they're going through like the same event, or like, and to you it was losing your first husband, and to his parents it was losing their son, but their grief is different than yours, and like their reaction was probably different than yours, and the way they processed that grief was different than yours, so it's not for anyone to be like, oh, it's been weeks, you need to get over it. It's like, no, process it. And yeah, you don't want somebody to like dwell and stay in that dark hole.
But many people do. They
That's
almost use it as their badge, like, hi, I'm still grieving after 5 years.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But that's, and that's their journey.
exactly. Yeah. I think it is. It's like you don't want to stay and dwell in the dark hole, because then it'll become the main character of your story, and like it'll become like your label, you know what I mean? And then, like you said, you walk around with it like a badge 5 years later, and you're still walking around grieving. So it's like it's very important to process what you're going through and actually acknowledge it and let it come out, rather than trying to suppress it and just being so afraid to feel it. Because like I said, like you'd be surprised at what's the other side of fear. And if you
Mhm.
actually process what you're going through, you actually acknowledge what you're going through, it's like having a conversation with like your inner child, or having a conversation like with your adult self. And it's just like, hey, I know we're grieving right now. I know what we're going through right now. Let's talk about it. How does it feel right now? What memories are like we holding on to, that we can carry with us, and every time we're feeling sad, we can come back to this memory of
Yes.
the person that we love. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes. Actually, speaking of grief, one of my clients is a woman who lost her daughter. Like, we're talking, the police knocked on her door. It was an auto accident. And so she spoke on grief, and especially about mothers losing a daughter for a number of years. And she just recently came out with her next book. I love it when my clients write books, because it's
Yeah.
really part of your authority. It keeps building your authority. But
Yeah.
she has moved beyond grief, and she's now talking about change. And her and I were having this conversation, and I just said, like, all grief is change, but all change is not grief.
Yeah.
And like, because she has moved beyond that, so it's she's toying with like the how do I serve this audience that has still lost their daughters. She's like, but she has moved on.
Hmm.
And that's her, it's part of her new path.
Yeah.
So true. Yeah. So, and that's another stage for her. She doesn't just speak on stages and have her own podcast, but she's like written books. And to me, that's, when I said earlier about speaking needs to be redefined and stages needs to be redefined. A book is a stage. A book is a form of speaking. It's another way to get your message out there. So there's some crazy number, like 86% of the people that if you interviewed them who want to write a book, but
Yeah.
very few people do. But so that just tells me that everybody has a story that they want to share. Everybody has a message that they want to share with others. So I just encourage people to go write the book.
100%. Like I completely agree with that. Like you and I were talking earlier, like everybody comes with a story. Everyone has like, even if I hear like, if I had 100 guests on and they all were like, yeah, my daughter died. Yeah, my daughter died. It'll still be 100 different interviews that,
Stories.
yeah, because each one is like grieving differently. The way that their daughter died might feel slightly differently. So there's still, it, even if though it comes off as the same theme or might sound like the same story, it's not,
Mhm.
once you get into like the sandwich of it, of like
Yeah.
there's varying differences of what they went through, what happened, when it happened, how old was the child. So yeah, I completely agree with that. Like everyone has a story, and I feel like it's rooted in some variations of trauma where like it might be an event that happened when they were a child, might be generational. And it's like, especially with generational, I feel like it's harder because a lot of generations don't talk about what happened before. So it's like you're sitting there and you're like becoming a detective and you're trying to figure out what happened and why you're feeling that way and you're picking up on it. So you become like an investigator, but then you also become like an author because you're putting the story together and
Mhm.
you're creating the story just from like the clues and the little pieces that you have, and you're putting it together and you're like, oh well, that explains so much. Okay, now I can process it and move forward.
Yeah.
So
And you're the one who's writing the story. So write the future, write the ending.
yes, 100%.
This sort of brings up something interesting that I'm
Sure.
thinking about because there's like 9 out of 10 people would rather be in the coffin than give the eulogy, which,
Yeah.
people are afraid of public speaking. And I've tried to find the research on this, and as of today, have not been able to find the research. So I question how they actually came up with this number. And this is what I mean. If I walked into a football stadium,
Hmm.
okay, for a football game, and they were asking, could you get up there and speak? Well, is it because like the football teams have suddenly gone on strike? Like even I, with as much experience in speaking, I would say no,
Yeah.
because that audience came there for a football game, not to hear Laurie-Ann speak about speaking or leadership or culture. None of that.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm sharing this is because I actually emceed an event. And Bobby Orr, here in the Boston area, Bobby Orr was going to be there.
Hmm.
But there was a hockey strike going on. So the gentleman who booked me to speak said, we might need you to actually speak about leadership. We're not sure if Bobby's going to make it because of the strike. And I'm
Mm.
thinking, are you serious? These people who are showing up were showing up because of Bobby.
Yeah.
Not because of, like, I would have been a disappointment because they're coming there to hear Bobby speak. And now there's this strike. So there's this potential that he might not be able to show up. And he wanted me to speak about leadership.
Yeah.
Like the audience would be disappointed. And I think because of that little fact, that's why a lot of people are just like, they're afraid of speaking
Hmm.
because there's so much that goes into this that a
Hmm.
lot of people don't think of. And like, do you have the right audience? I always tell people, like, you don't say yes to every event just for the sake of speaking. Like, when you reached out to me and said, would you be on my podcast? Well, tell me a little bit about your podcast.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your audience. Like, I gather that information. That's how I decide if I'm going to be a good fit for you. If I had decided that I wasn't going to be a good fit for you, I would probably be thinking in my client Rolodex, I do know some people.
Yeah.
And I would have offered that to you instead.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that because yeah, like you said, it's one thing to just like because I feel like when you start saying yes to everything, you go into people pleasing tendencies. And again, like you're either disappointing the audience and yourself, or you're just pointing yourself because now you're just like this audience, like you said, they're coming here to hear Bobby, and here I am. Like, what am I gonna do? They're probably gonna start throwing hockey pucks at me.
Exactly.
Because they're going to feel betrayed, like their trust was betrayed. This
Yeah.
is what they showed up for, and this is not what they're getting. And that becomes like a huge disappointment. Or even like I remember going to a concert and I was so excited for this concert, but there was a strike going on outside. A protest, and he showed up like 2 hours late, sang a couple of songs, and then left. And I was like, really? Like I drove all the way to Jersey for this.
And you bought a ticket for that. You paid for a park. Like, that's
Yeah.
exactly what happened at this event, is that like people bought tickets.
Mm-hmm.
So to come and just like, hey, here's Bobby. Oh, nope, sorry. Like, we're gonna have Laurie-Ann speak for
And
an hour. Like, that just, people would have got up and been like, I guess I'll just go to work early now, because, and it has nothing to do with me as a speaker. It was just their expectation.
yeah. Did he show up?
He did show up. Thank you for like helping me like tie that story up. He did show up. Oh my God, he was so wonderful.
Yeah.
As a speaker, like everybody's heard Maya Angelou's, phrase, it's not what you say, it's like how you make people feel.
Mm-hmm.
He made me feel like the rock star on that stage. Because afterwards, I did ask, he was signing autographs, and I did go up to him and I said, could I get your autograph? He's like, I got a different picture for you. And he pulled out a different black and white photo and signed it. And it's right over there, like on my bookcase.
That's awesome.
Yeah. My younger sister, who is a phenomenal back of the room girl, she actually came with me to help me with my table and to make sure that everything goes flawlessly. And yeah, she got an autograph as well. But she was just like, I got this picture. You're the only one who got that picture.
They probably told him like Laurie-Ann was going to be substituting for you. If you don't show up, you're going to put this woman's life in danger.
It was great. He really is such a nice man.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm so happy to hear that. And like it's great that it worked out the way it did, because you would have been telling me a whole different
story. And I have just been in, like, through the years of speaking, I mean, I've just had the opportunity to be on the stages and meet other speakers that I wouldn't have ever been able to meet, like Amy Porterfield, James Wedmore. And I was on the same stage with Tony Robbins. I mean, there's just so many like things that happen when you say yes.
Mm-hmm.
And this all like goes back to that first time where they asked me to speak, and I just like shook my head. Like, there's so much that has happened in the 25 years that wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have had those opportunities show up, but I did have those opportunities because I said yes.
100%. And I feel like as long as you say yes to the right opportunities, and it's not to say that sometimes when you say yes, they end up not being the right opportunities, but you learn from that. So then the next time you're just like, okay, last time I said yes, it ended up being like this. Do I really want to say yes now? And I think that's amazing, because I feel like that's also, I said yes to starting this podcast, and now I'm meeting a lot of great people, and like they're coming on the show and sharing their stories, and we're just having great conversations. And I've been wanting to do the podcast for years, and I would like, oh, but what am I going to talk about? Who's going to be interested in it? And now it's just like, I'm going to do it anyways, and the right people are going to come my way and find it interesting and enjoy it. and I get to meet a lot of cool people and just like share stories with them and have conversations. So here I am.
Here you are sharing your stage with other speakers, with other guests, and helping them get their message out there. That's beautiful. But I'm still going to encourage you to do your own solo episodes too.
Oh yeah, for sure. I already have a couple and I'm already like, it was so funny because I was thinking about what you said and I have a couple of like more guests coming on and I'm trying to like make the schedule in a way where I can still have like solo episodes in between and that way I can just push it like a week or two for certain like, the guest episodes. That way I can throw in my solo ones. But yeah,
Mhm.
thank you for the
Okay,
encouragement.
just to let you know, I have done guest interviews for my podcast, and sometimes it takes me 6 months to release their episode
Oh,
just because of my schedule.
yeah.
Like during the summertime, the past couple of years, I don't think I'm going to do it this year. I did series for July and August. It was a series. So if my guest topic what had nothing to do with the series, well, I'm not going to release the episode. So just permission to don't feel like pressured that you have to release a
Yeah.
guest episode within a certain couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Don't worry
Totally.
about it.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Because I was just like, but they recorded it with me and I'm sure they're excited. But you're right. It is like this is, I guess you could say like what they signed up for. They knew like they were coming on the show and depending on what the need is at the moment, that's when the episodes get released.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I like
Yeah. Like I've had a podcast now for, it'll be 6 years this summer. I can't believe it. It took me an extra year because this is such an interesting story. I had a coach at the time and we got onto one of our calls and I said, I think I want to start a podcast. And she said, no. She said, no, I think you need to learn how to convert your audience through social media posts. And because I was like, she knows best, I went against my gut. And so that added an extra year because then one day I got onto another call with her. Yes, I was still working with her. And I said, so I started a podcast and it goes live in 2 weeks. For anybody who's into human design, I'm a manifesting generator. So once I make a decision, it's just like, boom,
yeah.
done. And it literally only took me like 6 weeks. And I only dragged it out for 6 weeks because I was like, all right, I should have some sort of a launch period where I tell people that this podcast is coming. Otherwise, I probably could have just done it in 3 weeks.
Yeah. No, I just pressed record and release. I was like, let's just see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And you learn along the way.
You do.
Like
Yeah.
one of the interesting things about my podcast is I dove into the analytics. What's the percentage that people were listening?
Mm-hmm.
So my episode completion rate. So on Spotify, it's very different than it is over on Apple. So I
Mm-hmm.
have two different types of audiences. So I found that fascinating. And it also just let me know about my guest episodes versus my solo episodes. And I'm doing pretty good. I'm kind of glad that I have a pretty high completion rate.
Yeah.
So, and I'm glad because I want to share with my audience this information about speaking and communication and using your voice so that they go and use it in their life, in their business, in their careers.
That's amazing. And that ties into kind of like my question about like what's the ripple effect that you want to create for people. And then I was going to ask you this earlier and you just reminded me the human design aspect. How does that tie into what you do and how you help people? Because I'm a projector. So I have to take breaks in between. And I got to remind myself, like, okay, let's just do like 10 minutes of this and then we can take a break. So, yeah.
I do believe in working with your energy. However, I would tell you, make sure your breaks aren't too long.
Yes.
Like you don't, because of the way that Apple designs things. So a lot of people will take breaks in between seasons. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't do seasons. It's just like there's been an episode every single week since I started. And for a long period of time, I think almost 2 years, I did 2 episodes a week. And I'm just bringing that to a close again, although I do have the right to change my mind again. So who knows?
Okay.
So what's the ripple effect? The ripple effect that I'm trying to have is that, like your voice is your superpower. Your story is part of that superpower. And instead of looking at how other people are speaking, you get to decide on what your personal brand is. How do you want to be remembered? How do you want people to think of you? And to think about that in the terms of when you are speaking, whether that's at a board meeting, a department meeting, a chamber meeting, some industry meeting, or you're on a podcast. Or, when I did say speaking needs to be redefined, you never know who you're going to meet in line at the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
You could be behind and spark up a conversation with somebody who could literally is a CEO. It's like, I should have you come in. I just, a social media post that's going to go out this week. The weirdest place I ever spoke was in a bar. Okay. And they didn't even shut the music off overhead. So this was for a golf tournament. And this was for the people who were part of the chamber, who were attending the dinner, but they weren't part of the golf tournament. So I was speaking about leadership to this small group of people. And little did I know that there were a couple of people that were in there who were part of the committee for a women's conference. And one woman made the suggestion to have me. We should book Laurie-Ann to be our keynote speaker. And the other person said, I didn't think she was very good. And the person who suggested me, the woman, she was a CEO of a medical research company. She said she was speaking in a bar. She was like, how distracting do you think that was? She was like, I thought the message that she shared was great. I did end up speaking for that conference.
Amazing.
And that CEO for that medical research company, she ended up hiring me personally to work with her.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So even the weirdest thing, the weirdest environment really can be another breadcrumb.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to, you got to say yes.
Yeah. I think it's also just being authentically you and not being afraid of that. And you said in the weirdest places you don't know. Because I always strike up conversations with people in a grocery line, or if sometimes when I'm grabbing something and we just keep bumping into each other in every aisle, I'm like, we gotta stop meeting this, so I'll say something just to make out of it. So yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah.
So thank you for having me here to have this conversation with you. I mean, I feel so comfortable with you having this conversation. I can, only imagine some of your other guests, and I'm already thinking of other people that I can introduce you to because they have such interesting stories.
I love that. Thank you so much. And I love you and I, we just hit it off. We just got introduced a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And then we're just it's been really fun. And I've loved this conversation, and thank you so much for sharing what you do and why you do it. And it's amazing to bring people on that have a purpose and they want to create that ripple effect. So it's yeah, I'm gonna share with our listeners or viewers where they can find you.
Mm-hmm. And I would say if they want to learn more about speaking, to head over to my podcast. My main podcast is called Be in Demand. And I also have a petite podcast. That's what I call it. It's a limited series. It's 18 episodes. And that is called Public Speaking Monetization Tips. And when you see the graphics for both of them, you'll know that they're related.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'll definitely share those as well for everyone to be able to go over and just listen. But thank you so much. And I'm so glad that, unfortunately, it was a negative event that happened. But I'm so glad it brought you to where you are today, and you're able to share all of this with us and have these conversations, and that you're so passionate about it, because I can see the passion just ooze through you as you're talking about it, that it's so important for you to help people just find their voice and use it to help others. So thank you so much. And for everyone else, thank you for tuning in to the Rania Show. I'm your host, Rania, and I hope you have a wonderful week.